everybody, I have the CX500 Scrambler behind me and I'm getting rolling on the wiring portion of this build. Now, I've been requested a lot to do a CX500 install video for like an X21 system. And on this one I'm using a Morty system which wires essentially identical to that system. Now, I don't want to make a full install video because I've made install videos before. And the questions I get are about like how do you wire the ignition system? How do you wire this and that to that? Now the X21 itself is universal. You install it the same on any bike that you do it on. And basically the only differences you're going to have bike to bike are the ignition system and the charging system. So I'm going to kind of flip around. I'll walk you through the ignition system on this thing, what I will do to wire it, and then also the charging system. So this should help clear up any kind of confusion that you guys have, and you guys can use this video in conjunction with the X21 videos that I already have made. Okay, now looking at the bike, let me walk you through a couple of the systems, and we will start with the charging system. So these three wires coming out of the back of the stator here, these are your AC wires, your 3 AC output, so 1, 2, and 3. Real simple. This is going to go to your regulator rectifier. Your 3 AC wires there. It does not matter what orientation, it is fine. So what I'm going to do with this bike is, since these things are so close together now, I'm going to cut this section here and cut this section, install a connector that's going to fit vertically in this section right here, and that will be done. That will be our AC output to the regulator rectifier. From there, we're going to be outputting power through this plug. And this one is kind of set up to be more of like a factory replacement type style, so it actually adds a little bit of work for me because I have to modify all this stuff. But we have 2 power outputs and 2 grounds, so there's no sensing wire on this one. And these 2 wires we're just going to run up to our solenoid right here. That is going to be our battery supply. And then our grounds we're going to run up to our main ground here, which I have a nice clean spot on the electronics tray. And that will be the AC output as well as the charging output to the rest of the bike. Now, let's jump over to the ignition. Now, looking up top here, you're going to see we have spark units. Now, this is a TI bike, or a transistorized ignition CX500. So this is a very common thing after about 1980, 1981 among the Honda line. Now, this bike I think is an 82, could be an 81, I don't know. But it is a TI system, which means that back here we have more of a traditional electronic pickup, and this is a far superior ignition system than the outgoing CDI unit bikes. And the CDIs, you would see it would have a box larger than this, kind of rectangular, that would fit normally back here and have a few plugs. I'll put up a photo of that right now. But this system is very, very simple. Let me show you here. Now, here in the back of the engine, we have our pulsar cover. You have a mechanical advance unit that's back here that advances the timing whenever the engine spins higher in RPM. And I've explained those before in another video. Now, coming out of there, you have just 4 wires, 2 blue, 2 yellow. And if you look, you have a white piece of heat shrink over 1 blue and 1 yellow. And that's important because going through the pickups here, there's a resistor, and it is directional, so you have to make sure you get these things correct. Now, to wire this up, this is a very, very simple system. This just plugs into an existing plug on your harness. I'll show you guys that in a minute. And that simply runs up and goes into your spark units. Now, left and right does not matter. These things are not particular in that sense. So your stock harness is going to have the plugs that are necessary to fit these. If not, you can actually repin them. You know, like I have all of the components to remake an entire harness like this, but if you don't, you can actually use your stock harness, and I'll show you guys that. So how the system operates, it sends the timing signal up to the spark units, and then it sends a firing signal out to your coils. So these coils are different than you would find on a CDI bike. Your CDI coils have just a single wire input, whereas these have 2, a power and a ground. You'll notice we have a blue with a black and white stripe. Over on this side, we have yellow, again with black and white. You also notice on here, there's that black with white again. And then we have a standard green So these are identical. Now this is a very, very simple system to wire in to any bike to retrofit into like your X21 or your Morty system or whatever. Now your common power for this system is going to be this black with white stripe wire. Now all of these components tie into just a single black with white, and that would normally run up to your original kill switch. But since we have these switches that are controlled by the X21, all you're doing is running that single black with white after it's all tied in to just your ignition output on the actual unit itself. That's super simple. Beyond that, there's just a single ground, same kind of premise. You tie in all the greens among your spark units, those tie in, and it's just one ground, and you run that to your main chassis ground. That's literally it. And that is the biggest difference between this bike and any other bike that you would wire an X21 to. Now, obviously, guys, I do this stuff every day, so I have to have more tools and components and stuff like that than you do. So I have the actual connectors where I could rebuild all of these stock harness components. You know, I have the connectors and I have the terminals and I have the right crimping tool, and that's fine. Like, that's something that I have that maybe you guys don't. But a way that I will actually probably do it on this bike is by kind of harvesting the stock wiring harness. Okay, so this is the stock harness off the bike. And what you see here, over on this side, these are your coil outputs. So you have your red and your kind of clear plastic, kind of yellowish. It's your left and right coil. You can see that here. We have our matching red plug. And then there we are. Then we have the kind of neutral color. All right. And then beyond that, right here, so this guy is going to be where your advancer, where this section that comes out of the back of the stator, that's going to be where that plugs into. And that's going to provide the signal up to the spark units. As I've mentioned, your spark units, those are these guys right here. And again, if you look close, we have those white pieces of tape on these harnesses. So it's really easy to get those things confused if you remake this all by yourself. So don't ask me how I know. I've made that mistake, guys. So what you would do, and what I will probably do, is just unwrap this entire harness, and then I will separate just the ignition side. And you're going to see it's only like 2 wires that it has tied into the rest of the harness, and then it's just going to come out as a big chunk from which you can kind of shorten and just make it fit. So I will go ahead and proceed with doing that now. Okay, I've got all of the sheathing, all of the electrical tape off of at least this section of the harness, because this is what we're going to focus on here. So back on this end, we have the actual coil plugs right here. So you can kind of see already, you can kind of take all these out. We have a blue and a yellow, and then we have 2 black with white stripes. This is our main ignition power source here. Right here you can see the splice that sends power on this one circuit to both the front and the back. So coming from the front here, this is where we're getting power to the actual wire itself. So follow it back here, basically just 3 wires, you know. So we follow that down here, and then we have this section. Now these two plugs, as I've mentioned, these are what go into the actual spark units themselves. And again, they don't care which one's left or right, but there is a piece of heat shrink on each wire here that is important, which we'll discuss right now. This is coming from the engine. So the pulsar pickup in the engine, that has the plug that runs up out and plugs into here, and this is what generates your timing signal and then sends that to the spark units. So what's really important is if you were to make a cut between this section and this section on either of these yellow and blue wires, one of them is going to have a stripe, and you need to make sure you match that up with the corresponding striped wire on this side. So on this end, we have the yellow and blues, like I've mentioned, and then basically we just have a pair of greens and a pair of black with white, and that is our main ground. So you can see here we have a splice going to the two, and then that just runs into the rest of the harness, and that's just a common ground. And then this is the single black with white wire, which is running right up here. So it's really only tied in with two connection points. I can cut it right here and here on the green, and then right here on the black with white, and this whole thing comes right out. Scalpel. Alright, so on our coil side, we're going to have the splice where the black with white comes in. So I'm going to redo this splice anyway because we're going to shorten stuff, so it doesn't even, I don't have to save it or anything like that. But I will go ahead, cut it right there. So now that's free. We'll basically just cut the splice out of it. So that lets me remove the wire up here. So now we only have a couple points tied in. Okay, then we have our grounds. Go ahead and clip that right there. And right there. And this is free from the harness. Now we're done with this. And here in front of us, simplified ignition circuit. And the reason you would do this is, again, just to kind of make sure you don't mess this side up with the heat shrink on here, and you can keep everything you could basically just keep that attached, and then you're just running three wires, essentially, 3-4 wires to their extremities. Now everything on my bike is really compact and really located close to itself, so we are going to shorten this quite a bit, but it's really no more complicated than this, and this is the most CX500 specific item on this whole install. Otherwise, it's all just by the book. Okay, we have moved off the table. We're on the bike now. So I know this looks like chaos right now, but I've been working away at getting this thing nice and clean. So let me kind of show you what I got. We have our two coils, obviously, and then right here are the two plugs for the actual spark units on the other side. So I have that kind of tied in and loomed, and that's the 4 wires that are running down along the backbone here, and these run in to the actual pulsar pickup on the engine itself. So that's our timing signal running up, and that's just its own little circuit there. So also coming from these, we're going to have a blue and a yellow wire, and that's our left and our right. And right now these are just overlapping because I have a long length coming this way and a long length going this way, and I gotta cut one of them and re-terminate it. So I have both of those plugs under here. I know it's probably impossible to see, but one plug runs out into one coil, and then the other one is just kind of looping back down and goes to the other side. So nice and clean here. And then what we have to do, what the challenging part is as far as wire routing, is we have to tie in our powers, and that is our black with white wire that powers the system. Now you'll notice here I have a yellow with red. This is not intended to confuse you guys. This is just because I have this color code, and this is like for your X21s, for your ignition power. So I decided to go ahead and just redo it and just replace the black with white on a couple of the circuits here. And I'll also do that with a green wire. I'm going to change that to black and re-terminate it. But the idea is the same. So coming from our harness up here, this runs from my Morty unit, what would also be the X21, just runs up, and I have a power and ground. So our ignition power is just going to tie into these three. We'll tie our grounds in, run that to there, and that will be complete on the ignition circuit. All right, before I loom this up, let me go ahead and kind of show you what I have done. So we finished the ignition sub-harness. This is going from the spark unit plugs, as you saw, and they're running to the coil outputs. And then this section right here is running down to the actual pulsar coil pickup in the back of the engine. So the yellow with red stripe is our ignition system power. So we have two leads going back to each coil feed here. I have a splice right here, so necking down 2 into 1, and then this necks it back up, actually 1 into 3. So 2 of those wires are going to the spark units, and then this is the output side here. Also, I have my grounds. There's no end to this, it's just sealed off with heat shrink, but it has a splice for 3 wires, so we have 2 of them coming from the spark units, and then 1 as our output. So these 2 are going to go together and obviously meet up right here with these 2 wires. And here you are, the shortened harness. So of course our coil leads, as I said, this goes down to the engine, to the pulsar coils. These go to the spark units there. And then this is our main power and ground output, which will get another plug and is tied into the rest of the bike. So beyond just these 2 wires, your entire ignition system is completely independent. So there you have it. The sub harness that we shortened and modified is back on the bike. It's looking good and it blends in with the rest of the harness. And as of now, this thing is almost done as far as the wiring is concerned. And before too long, we're going to have that first startup, and I'm super excited. I really want to hear this thing and I really want to ride it. The information in this video about this particular ignition system, the Honda TI or transistorized ignition, this is going to translate to any bike that has it in the Honda line. So there's a lot of bikes like all of your dual overhead cam CB750s, 900s, 1100s, that kind of thing. And then like your 650s and just a lot of bikes down the line. There's a lot of them that use this system, and this information will directly translate should you need it. So hopefully it was helpful. And if you guys have any questions, leave them below. I'll be sure to get right back to you. If not, send me a message on social media and I'll look for it there. The next video you'll see will probably be another wiring video on this one. It won't be like a how-to, but it will just probably be more montagey. Montagey, is that a word? I don't know. It is now. But anyway, look for that video soon. Check some other videos out on the channel if you haven't already, and check out my website for some choice motorcycle parts like you see here. So anyway, I hope you guys liked this video and hope to see you in the next one. Thanks for watching.